Welcome. So this is our second session. And yeah, so welcome to everybody. Welcome to people coming back and to new joiners. Just a little overview of today. And I just wanted to let you know what we're up to today. And I also want to introduce Nathan. So right now I can't see him on my screen. He is our moderator, and we didn't introduce him last week. And so he's the one that is fielding the questions. He's organizing all the technology so that I can focus on facilitating and answering questions for sure. So what we're going to do, I know, Sandra, you said you wanted to have a few words tonight, so we'll do that. Then we're going to do a quick review of last week's strategies. And we're going to continue with layers of anxiety. And we can also say those are layers of stress. It can be debatable and how we call it. And it really isn't about the definition or the word. It's about what we're going through and how to manage that. And that's what we're doing here, is building resilience. So we're going to do that and always provide strategies. And then the other thing we're going to do is introduce the journaling, because next week, pardon me, as part of it, we're going to do a little bit more journaling and talk about that and send out strategies. And so we're going to actually have a little bit of time today. So have your journal ready. And I suggested to try 2 journals. So yeah, we're going to have some time today for the journaling. Not a lot of time, because this is educational. And so I just wanted to introduce it near the end. And the other thing too is I don't want to diss my provider. However, if you do lose my picture, I will be on by voice within minutes. So we're just working out those strategies and challenges as we go. And it's just life in Muskoka and life in the country. And Sandra, you said you had a few words and you wanted to say a few things?
Yes, we have a few new participants tonight. So I just wanted to basically just go over the fact that this is an educational format, that you can either raise your hand or write something in the chat line, and Nathan, who is our moderator, he will see it, and then we will interject your question as we're able to fit it in. And also, I wanted to introduce the new members to Anita, who they've spoken to on the phone. And Anita is the go-to person for hospice. She's a Lakehead University social work student doing her final year's placement with us. And any questions or anything that you wanted, if you wanted to pursue any more support, or you have questions, or you might be interested in putting together a grief group, that would be great. And I just want Anita to say too, that there's been some interest for more sharing between the participants. And so Anita, do you want to just briefly talk about the Facebook page? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Sandra. Yes, so I just wanted to, we had talked about the fact that people were hoping that this would be somewhat interactive, and we wanted a suggestion was put forward actually by Elka, that perhaps starting a private Facebook group for all the participants could be something we could do for you if there's interest. So perhaps somehow, if you can just indicate if that's something you would be interested in, perhaps send like a message through the chat to all of us, then we could set that up, and then you would also have that interactive component as part of this series that would just include the people who are registered. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, and welcome everyone who joined up since last week, and those who were here last week.
Great, thank you. And yeah, about the questions, like Sandra said, Nathan will field those. And if there's something that we don't cover, just know we'll do it next week. And I think last week we did cover everything, and yeah, so it feels really good, and we're happy to make it interactive as much as we can and still stay on course. So this is for you, and so we're guided by your questions and your input. Okay. So I'd like to just review a few of the strategies. I want to spend just a little bit of time on that, and so then we can continue. And I'm just uncovering my watch so that I can make sure I do that. So one of the strategies that I presented last week was the 0 to 10 scale, and 0 being calm and 10 being I can't make a thought, or I'm short circuiting, or I've got reeling thoughts. The 10 is pretty uncomfortable, and that can come from anxiety, it can come from grief, it can come from rage. So it's really a very heightened emotion. And the reason that we're introducing this body awareness is that it's so important that you know what your body is telling you. And like anxiety or stress, they're signals and they're opportunities. And we can only change and manage what we're aware of. So I'm hoping that it was a task for you participants to try. And the more that we do it, it becomes natural. So it's not something you have to think about all the time. It's just really noticing your body and how you're responding to different situations. The other task that I gave everyone was to take some time in nature, and it does feed our soul. So I hope that people did in this phenomenal weather that we've got. And we're so lucky to live in Muskoka and take advantage of our space that we have here, and also our trails and forests and country roads. So I hope that you were able to do that. The other thing we did talk about was presence, and that will come up other times as well. So not to worry if you feel like you're missing some things. We are recording the sessions, and there'll be an opportunity at some point to review them. The other thing we talked about, you'll see, I think all of you now, even newcomers, have the handout on the layers of anxiety with substances, just to make sure that you're noticing that you are drinking enough water, and especially in this warm weather. And I know tonight I'm really warm. I took off my sweater and my scarf, and yeah, we've got this great weather right now. So again, notice how your body responds. Okay, I'll just, any questions that are coming up, Nathan or Sandra? That's good, keep going? Okay, awesome. So today I want to continue with the layers of where stress comes from, and also just to, when we talked last week, we talked about the symptoms, and we're not debating whether it's anxiety or stress or what, but it's uncomfortable. So let's keep looking at that. And we did end at physical. There is reality. And, you know, when life just doesn't really dole things out evenly, and a lot of times we get dumped on, and again, it may be something we need to attend to. So it could be things like decision-making can create stress, finding a job, moving is considered, I think it's one of the top 3 stressors that we have. Could be finances, it could be visiting somebody, it could be awaiting a test result, it's an interview, surgery. All these things are real things that are on our plate, and knowing that, you know, we need to know what our limits are. And one of the things too that I talk about, and you may want to research it, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And Maslow, Dr. Maslow, in the 50s, he was fascinated with what created stress and anxiety in people. And he created this triangle, and you can Google it afterwards, and maybe you want to share it in your discussions. And our basic needs are food, shelter, warmth, clothing, housing, all those basic needs. And and we talked about this a little bit last week. And even though us panelists, we have a lot of practice with our strategies, and if one of those basic needs are challenged, it can throw us into acute anxiety immediately, because it's real and it threatens our limbic brain, which is our old brain, and we feel threatened in our survival. So it gets us all. And so it's interesting to recognize what's reality. And the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this one is, and I did have a client come in, and sometimes they tell me this list of this is going on in my life, this is going on, this is going on. Well, there's 5 or maybe 3 to 5 things that are really major, and that would give me anxiety. And sometimes life does that, and sometimes we're not going to sleep for a week or a month. However, these things do pass, and these things do change eventually, and it's about managing them and figuring out what the self-care is. And that's some of the things that we're going to be doing here too, is right. And then with 2020, what's happened it's been like a big sack of potatoes on everything. We've had all these stressors. Well, let's just add something that's really heavy for us all. And we were saying too that we've been stretched mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and that's where we're going with our journaling later, is how to support that and put some intentions out for that. Okay. So, reality. And also know your limits. Actually, before I carry on to the next one, is, sometimes we can plan some things, and sometimes we can't. But if we can, that's always a good idea. So if it means like renovations, if it's something that's voluntary, well, maybe that's when you don't want to be doing other major things. So sometimes we can limit or space out some of these real stressors. And it's also about supporting our nervous system. Okay. The next one, this one came from my daughter. I was heading out to do a talk, and she said, "Mom, don't forget overstimulation." I went, wow, okay. So cell phones, rapid text, computers, emails, TV, gaming, and all these things, as wonderful as they are, as much as we all rely on them, as we are today with Zoom, they can create overstimulation. And I know, Sandra, you and I remember, I'm sure, when the first fax came along. I remember one of my colleagues being so excited about these drawings being sent from his architect through a fax. I remember that. I remember the answering machine, that we pressed with the tape recording, and the dial-up phones. Anyways, what has happened, and this has been happening for a while, and it's not that it's negative. So some of these things that we're talking about isn't about being negative. However, if it adds another layer to the stress, so it's just about being mindful of what can we lower, how can we lower some of this, some of the stimulation. And one of the things that cell phones has created, and I actually noticed this with emails, is we expect an answer much quicker than we used to. And now with texting, I don't know how people are, but I even find myself, because I only just got a cell phone a couple of years ago. So I started noticing that, how come they weren't texting back right away? And so what happens is we're expectant. So we're not calm or relaxed. And that may only be a 0.5 for you. However, it's still there. And there is a term now called FOMO, and do any of my panelists know what that is? I think Nathan might. FOMO, F-O-M-O. It actually is a term, fear of missing out. So it is a thing. And our young people particularly have that problem, but a lot of them too can self-regulate. So the whole point is just be aware. It's not that this is negative. And the other thing where this this awareness is important is in sleep hygiene. So getting ready for sleep. And we've talked about, the blue screen TV and computers the same. And you know what? I don't have an iPad to read on. However, if you're finding that you can't go to sleep, great. If you find you still have trouble going to sleep, it might be that the iPad is making your body think it's daytime. And just being aware of that and starting to have a sleep routine that, probably an hour before you're ready to go to bed is think about your own ritual, whatever that may be. And whether it's a shower or maybe a warm tea or, even brushing teeth is part of that ritual. Yep. And I see there's some questions, so.
So I had a thought in regards to these different layers of anxiety. So a lot of them that you've mentioned are things we might have control over and control over addressing, like getting more sleep or being aware of what we do prior to sleeping, going out into nature, that sort of thing. But what about the things we don't have control over? Like, for example, you mentioned at the beginning, right now, we've all been exposed to this major stress of COVID-19, which we have very little control over, and we only have control over what we can do in response to what's being recommended. But even that, everyone's going to respond a little bit differently. So, I guess my question is, how can we respond to the things we don't have control over when they're causing a lot of anxiety, as opposed to things we do have control over that cause anxiety?
Right, and that's a great question. Yeah, great question. We have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and we can, a lot of time, like what's between our ears, no one has control over. So in a situation, and that's kind of what this workshop, what we're doing here is these strategies. What can we do with what's on our plate right now? And I think that's what you're kind of asking, is that sometimes we can make changes. And you know what? Here's the thing, and that this is why this is such a great question. So it comes back to our scale. So if we're at, let's say, I don't know what your number might be. Let's say before 2020, your scale, your average was 3 to 4. And I'm not saying you particularly, Anita, but any of the participants, but let's say you were already managing your stress and your anxiety as best as you could. And then of course, March 13th happened and boom, right? So our stress level went up a couple notches. So, and what you're saying is, and it could be with anything that we don't have control over. I mean, grief is one as well. So what we can do is we have mastery between our ears. So we have control over our thoughts. And that is going to come evident as we move through the workshop. The other thing we can do is when we're stressed like this is we need to feed our nervous system. And I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but even a warm drink helps calm the nervous system. So it even can be just warm water. It doesn't have to be, a tea. Some people don't like tea. It could be, calcium, magnesium, our B vitamins do help feed our nervous system. Sometimes too, essential oils I'm not selling essential oils. I don't want anybody to think that, but you know, you want to have high quality oils. They can make a difference. And so, you know, when you say that, so our goal, I think our goal is how can we lower this number and cope with what's on our plate? And so this reality that we have, whatever it is, whether it's moving, a new job, what's going on in the world. And, you know, I've had to stretch myself as I know that you have too, because, you know, you're helping people. And how do we remain positive? How do we remain that, that we can, you know, keep that level low and then still encourage others. And so for me, and I'm going to share some of that today, is about my journaling. And then we're going to do a little bit more on that next week, is how can we change channels? Because right at this moment, and that's another great resource, is presence. Right at this moment, we're all on Zoom together, and I think everything's okay right at this moment. You know, and I know tonight I'm going to my house, and so I think about that presence and what's on my plate in front of my face. And so, and where I'm going with this is that it keeps building our resilience, and that's what we want to keep doing. And that's going to translate into our little journal exercise, is that we got to keep building, keep filling that cup, so that maybe that I was going a 4 or 5, I want to keep it more a 2, a 1, 2, 3, because of what's going on. And especially, so take, you know, the COVID is when I go shopping, I know immediately my stress level changes. However, I think because of my strategies, I don't lose my mud if somebody else is losing their mud, or I'm prepared, and we're a little more hyper vigilant. However, our recovery is going to be quicker. And when I come back home, you know, I'm grateful for a good experience. And then I go back to what channel do I need to be on? So I'm hoping I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I think that does. But I also wanted to add, like for me personally, when I'm overwhelmed by some of the external factors that I don't necessarily have control over, I forget to do some of the more basic things that I do have control over, right? And so that's where this practice can be really great in just, you know, even just retuning and taking care of those things, and it sets a tone for your intentions, right? And I
Absolutely.
also, we have a question from an attendee as well, wondering maybe what some of the indicators are if you're sliding above what your window of tolerance is.
Okay. I'm just going to hold that question for a minute. I just want to emphasize what you just said, Nathan, and I've got to recall that. Sorry. Just say it again.
Yeah, well, just some of the things that when I'm overwhelmed by some things that I don't have control over, the more basic things that I do have control over, just they slip by me. You know.
Great. Yes, and that's a great point. And so here's an invitation for everybody, and this is something I do encourage people to do, is when we're out of and somebody called it the window of tolerance, when we're in that non-thinking place, whatever that number is for you. So I'm already reaching that myself at 6, 7, 8. I start having trouble, but 10 for sure. We know enough to go to our resources. And here's the thing is, if you want to put it on your phone, I put it in my journal. So I have journals in my studio and I have them in the home. I know enough when I'm that stressed that I can open my journal and it has the list of my resources. So what I would encourage people, and I think we mentioned it a little bit last week about creating a daily practice. And so my daily practice, I put that in my journal. Every time I start a new journal, I put the list of my resources in there so I have them. Other people, you don't have to do it that way, but you can put it in your phone. So any of these strategies that work for you, put it somewhere you know enough to go there. I used to have them on my fridge on a little recipe card, but people don't use recipe cards so much anymore. I also had it by my bedside. I had one in my purse. So I knew enough that I could open that or look at the fridge and go, okay, what is it that I'm eating right now? Because I'm out of my tree, I'm out of my mind, literally out of my mind. Though we do know enough, like our mind still has the capacity to go, okay, can I go to that list? So that's how you do it. Yeah. And have it somewhere obvious. If you think, like everybody's a little bit different. So if you think you won't be able to look on your phone or look it up in your journal, then put it somewhere obvious. Put it on your fridge or your mirror so that your mind gets used to knowing that your list of resources are there. Yep, Sandra, and I haven't forgotten another question, but go ahead. Sandra?
I just wanted to say really quickly, it reminds me of this clinic for young people at the University of Western Health Center, and it's called the Brake Shop. And it's just like when your car is rolling down a hill and suddenly you realize you don't have any brakes and you're sort of going, it's figuring out how you can still stop the car. So I just wanted to add that and it's a good visual for me. Lots of times I picture a car, in front of me, and then I say, I have to find a way to put on the brakes. And it just always reminds me.
Yeah, and that kind of does lead into the answer for that question is, what are the indicators? And that's a great question. So here's what I would suggest is practice that scale for yourself, because everybody's number is a little bit different. And one of the things I do is I check in to myself in the morning. And, I don't wake up every morning happy and inner dancing or calm and peaceful. And so that's that check-in. And if I'm having trouble, and here are some of the indicators, if you're having trouble thinking or planning or, feeling pretty down, that may be another time to pull out a different strategy and look at those again. Notice what your numbers are. And for you, everybody's a little bit different, and situations when your Maslow gets challenged, you could be having the greatest harmonious day. And, if your well pump goes or the plumbing, your pipes freeze, well, you're going to go 0 to 10. And we all do. The difference, though, is that, as you practice these strategies regularly, you're going to recognize, okay, I just went to 10, and you're going to pull out those things you need to do, whether it's a breathing exercise, whether it's a brisk walk to clear your head, whether it's rescue remedy or all the above, or essential oils. I always say that my bedside table looks like a anxiety warrior station. So all the things are there and they're ready. Yeah.
I just wanted to add that before I was familiar with the term "my window of tolerance," how I came to it was when I was out of my window of tolerance, and the way I knew that was because I was very reactive, and I wasn't even aware of that concept. But I think that could be one indicator that you're out of your window of tolerance if you're finding yourself being very reactive. And one of the things I learned as a strategy was becoming curious about that. Like, okay, why am I becoming reactive to, somebody behaving in a particular way, or to something that normally might not cause me to feel that way. And I find, again, and I think we mentioned it last week, as soon as I become curious about what's coming up in me, I'm using a different brain function, and then I'm no longer caught up in the emotion, and I become present. And so that comes back to what Elka said about coming to the moment and coming to the present moment. And then you're no longer reactive. You can respond to whatever's happening in front of you, and that can alleviate anxiety as well, I think. So just
The other indicator is, you mentioned being reactive. The other indicator is flatlining. What I call flatlining is just not reactive at all. So something, either an emergency could happen or something very exciting and you feel nothing. And that's also an indication that you're out of your window of tolerance. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's a whole term and I could actually do a flip chart on that. So if it's something that all the participants want to know of how a window of tolerance can shrink or expand, and actually the good news is everything we're doing here expands our window of tolerance, which means we're actually building our resilience. So that's the good news. So I hope that's helpful. One of the things, I think everyone got the handout on the social beliefs. Yeah. Sorry, I was stuck under my computer. So I've actually put, I'm putting social beliefs and cultural beliefs together. And because it's hard sometimes to figure out which is which. Now, a social belief has come from our family, our neighbors, our community, teachers, mentors, and classmates, peers. And a cultural belief is something that's come through generational as down the generations. Yeah, so from grandparents, great-grandparents, pioneers, perhaps a culture, whether it's European or Indigenous or Eastern. So it's, there's all different cultural beliefs. And I'm not sure that we have to differentiate them all. Though the awareness and where it causes stress is, well, actually, let me back it up a little bit, is why would we pick up these beliefs and how does that happen? And one of the things that we've talked about is that children are sponges, usually to about age 6 or 7, and they have no filters. So what happens is children are absorbing the beliefs of their tribe, which is their family, as well as teachers, classmates, peers, neighborhood, culture. They're absorbing the beliefs. And there's a reason for that. And when we think back in hunter-gatherer times, I'm just going to ask the question, why would that be important? Why would it be important that you picked up the beliefs of your tribe? And of course, it was for survival. If we didn't, how we were going to fit into the tribe, how we were going to fit into the family. So today in our culture, we pick up beliefs like sponges, and even from media, social media and TV. And where this, and a belief is not a right or wrong, so there's no judgment here. It's just to be aware, where did it come from? And does it serve you? And is it true? So I think your handout, I gave some examples because sometimes we think we're not always aware of our own belief systems. And so I've got a few here, and I think people are able to see them. So some of the ones that we hear is, and I'm not saying they're true, it's just the things that are floating around. You have to work hard for a living. Don't be happy, life will slap you. Opposites attract. We've heard all these. Boys are tough, boys don't cry. It's ugly to be angry. Canadians are gentle. We have that reputation. So I make bad choices. Money is the root of all evil. And some of these are old. We don't even have them anymore, but I'm not good enough. You know, these are just beliefs. So get over it, toughen up. All of us have heard some of these, and good things don't come easy. They're just beliefs. So if you have a belief, or if some of these resonate and go, well, okay, it's true, that's okay. Or you're thinking through the week about something that you think is true, ask yourself, and this is a question, is ask yourself, is it true 100% of the time? Is it true 100% of the time? And that's a great way to begin to change your take on the belief. And here's the thing, and I want to give you a couple examples. And well, being a woman, I would want to be the good daughter. And perhaps the good daughter will have a family reunion. But inside, I really don't want to do it. And yet, the belief is to be the good daughter or to have the big meal. And so what happens is our bodies are starting to react to what's going on in my head. So my belief is I need to be the good daughter and have the reunion, but my whole body is starting to show anxiety as soon as I have that thought. So the thought isn't a bad thought. It's just to understand the belief and also understand what your body is doing. And so again, with this understanding, it's about these levels of stress or anxiety, that 0 to 10. And of course, that number could change for anybody in that situation. So here's the thing though, is, after some thinking, you might sit back and go, you know what, it's going to really stress me out. However, I still want to do the reunion anyways. And that's okay. It's okay. Just recognize you have the choice, recognize it's a belief. And that actually does take some of the stress away, to know that we're not helplessly being drawn into a belief system. And there's just so many of them out there. A fun little story that I tell is, and maybe some of you have heard it, I think my panelists have, is, and I also beg pardon to any vegetarian at the moment, is a young girl is asking her mom how come she's cutting the bone off the ham shank as she puts it in the oven. And the mom says, well, that's how Granny always did it. So Granny comes over for supper and they ask, the little girl says, Granny, how come you always cut the bone off the ham? And she said, well, that's how my mom always did it. So they went to visit the great granny, and so that was the big question, is why did the bone get cut off the ham? And the great granny said, well, it was the only way it would fit in the stove, because they had small stoves then, wood-fired stoves. So, and it's a simple story, though, we can think about what happens generationally, and there's just so much, and this can be so rich. And again, it's about being aware. It's not a right or wrong. And you still may choose to go with the belief that feels right for you. Just know it's not an absolute. And what it does do, just going down, is creating self-doubt. And if we can, again, focus on our body and understand, where is this anxiety or stress coming from, or this questioning, perhaps look at the beliefs or the thoughts that you're having. So I'm going to ask if there's any questions at this point, because I do want to spend some time on the journal exercise, and then we'll have time for questions. So has anything come up about any of this that people want? Not at the moment? Awesome. Okay. So what I'd like to do, and I'd like everybody, if you can pull out your journals, and I was hoping it was on the list. So I'm hoping that you have a journal, and if you don't, just maybe quickly go get a journal. And I'm just going to talk a little bit. This is just an introduction, so don't worry. And newcomers, don't worry, because we're going to be collecting more things for collaging into our journals. And again, this is a smorgasbord of ideas. You don't have to do it, but if you want to try, and I'll just share what I do. So one of the journals, and actually we're not going to use this one today, I'm just going to hold it up, is a simple Hilroy journal. Nothing too fancy, but that's okay. Anything in it is good. It's just, this one is a working journal. And next week, we're going to talk a little bit about what's the difference of a working journal. And I've been asked about that before. And I'm going to switch cameras. And we're not going to start the music just quite yet, but I'm going to give everybody, we're going to allow about 10 minutes. So what I like to do is introduce this activity. So if you have your collage or your pictures that you gathered, you can do that. You can have those. I have some that I pre-cut, so I would be ready. And just to give you an example and an idea, and we're going to do more of this next week. So it's something that you can collect. And our focus is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. So what I want you to think about, and if you want to, you can write this down. So if you don't have pictures or you weren't prepared, that's okay. We can do it by writing and what I'd like you to spend some of this time with when we go into the music portion, so it's only going to be 10 minutes, is what are your intentions in the next week? We're going to be together for 3 more weeks and then 5 in the new year. What are your intentions of how you hope to build yourself physically, how you hope to build yourself spiritually, how you hope to build yourself mentally, and how you hope to build yourself emotionally? And maybe, Nathan, if you don't mind just typing those 4 categories up, just so if, participants, if you want to check. So what are your intentions? What are your wishes? What's your hope for our work together and in the next few months for yourself in these 4 categories? And then I'm going to show you some examples of what I've done. And yeah, so we'll go from there. So I'm going to switch cameras. Oh, Anita, yeah.
I'm just wondering if there'll be an opportunity to share those after the exercise, or some of us or some participants to share what their hopes are, intentions, if they'd like to. Just wondering if that might be a nice
That'd be
opportunity.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Sure. I think this is a sort of an experiment for all of us. So what I want to do is I just want to show the example, and I'd like everybody just to take that time. And Nathan has some lovely music, and so I won't be speaking. And when he stops the music, that'll be our cue. And yeah, that would be a great way to share. And then the last couple minutes is I want to talk about how we can get ready for next week. But this is kind of a prep for next week as well. So is that okay? And Sandra, you didn't have your hand up? You were okay? Okay. So I'm going to switch cameras. So there we go. And I'm going to just pull this out. And I think everybody can see it. Actually, it's hard to see the lettering, but it says how to celebrate every day. And for me, the pictures heighten my intention. So the intention for this journal, this was my last journal that I had, was how can I celebrate every day? And I get a little carried away sometimes. My other intention for this journal was I noticed that in the last few months, I haven't been nurturing my spiritual energy the way that I normally did. And part of that is about isolation, though, again, how to be creative and opening that up and putting that intention out. So for me, it is very powerful when we can put it into pictures. Our brain will see it in a very different way, and it will heighten that stimulation. So I just, this is a series of pictures. They just came from different places. You might recognize some of them from ads or even That one's from the newspaper. So it's there. Okay. So that's that. And then I think I can shift over. So this is my current journal there, and this will be upside down, but I really don't think it matters. And actually, I did have, I'll show you today, when we're going to talk about a little bit about this next time, is about a gratitude journal. And you know, I think what we can do is, as I'm gluing this on, I think we can start the music so we have time after. Is that okay, Nathan? Okay, so cut me off and I'll continue and I'll do the demonstration. know that's far too short. When I do this, actually, I play for hours. And one of the nice things with the arts is it does take us out of our thoughts. So I am open to sharing. And do we have some volunteers?
I don't see anybody asking to share in regards to the journaling, but I do have a participant that had their hand up, perhaps with a question prior to the journaling exercise.
Okay.
Okay, hi. I don't get magazines in hardly ever in my house. So do you have other suggestions of where to go for these images and words?
Oh, sure. Oh, Sandra.
We have magazines. Elka has lots of magazines, and we can gather some up and drop them off to you if that would be, so you can participate. Would you like that?
Yes, thank you. I already, Anita has already been kind enough to offer to drop off a couple of things, so it can just be all bundled together. That would be very helpful. For me, I'm here because of COVID, because of the anxiety spike for me with respect to COVID. So the other question that I had was, should the journal be directed into a particular issue, or should it be just general?
Well, one of the things that actually I'm a little ahead of myself. Next week was going to be mandalas and mantras, which is also intention setting. And I am answering your question. And then we are going to talk about different journaling. So really, it's about building resilience. And no matter what stressors are going on in our lives, is so specifically, what are your wishes or your hopes for you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and if perhaps physically you're in top-notch shape, but perhaps and you've expressed the stress that you've been feeling is, what are your hopes for emotional support and what you're hoping for in the next few months. So you can be as specific as you like. And it's a beginning. We're going to, as we move through the workshops, we will be sending out handouts and questions that are prompts. A lot of us sometimes have learned that journaling is good. However, we don't know how to start. So we're going to have prompts and questions. We're also going to talk about, what does an affirmation or intention look like, and look at wording. So there'll be lots of opportunity to share, and that would be a great Facebook discussion, or to bring the questions here. So it can be as specific as you like, or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to say too, is that sometimes we're unaware of what appeals to us till we actually go through the magazine. And I've done this so many times, and people say, I don't know what to look for. And I said, when you come to it, it'll speak to you and it'll say, pick me, and it'll be a reason why you pick that picture. So you may think about searching for pictures that relate specifically to your anxiety right now. But actually, when you go through the magazines, might find something that maybe you weren't even aware of, and then again, along comes that curiosity about what made that particular saying or picture speak to you. So.
Yep, and that's last week. The task was just to go through magazines and pick out things that you like. And Sandra, you're right. When I've done this too for years, and I love it. And sometimes, actually, it's just I'll show you one I've been working on, and it's just colors that were enticing me, and so the page was just about colors, and they were images that I had picked up over time, and I just throw them in a file folder. And because this is kind of a big exercise for me, I now have topic file folders. I'm not saying you have to do that, but so this is a collection of images. I just found this rose, and so whatever moves you, and then later you'll find the words, and you can always put the words in yourself. And I just and there's a candle, but it was about color in this one. The other thing you can do, and I don't know what resources everybody has, if you're looking for something very specific and it's that important, look it up on the internet and print it off. And that's a possibility too. Yep. Anita?
So I don't know if you're going to wrap up. So I just wanted to remind people that if you are interested in the Facebook page, that maybe you could email me directly, because everyone should have my email address, and then we can go from there. It's probably the easiest method of getting it going if there is enough interest. So I just wanted to say that again.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And what we're going to do is, so next week, yes, and I am wrapping up, so thank you. Next week, we're going to finish up some of the layers, and we are going to work with mandalas and mantras. So again, following the line of intentions and what we're hoping for. And so if you, I did send the mandalas. I have some very basic ones that we're going to send to you, so you don't have to look for mandalas. And if you have colored markers or pencil crayons, and if you do need something, let Sandra and Anita know, because that is part of the workshop. And we are going to have a guided meditation next week, so that will be part of it. And again, you'll probably want your journal, and don't worry about separating your journals at this point unless you want to. It's really just a personal preference. There's no right or wrong in anything that we're doing here. It's a process and that we're doing together. And the other reminder too is, if there are any questions that come up through the week, is send us an email, and we want to make sure that we address them, because this is for you. And thank you again, everybody, for the honor.
Thanks again, Elka, Anita, Nathan, you're great. And thanks for all the good questions and the feedback from everyone who's participating. And I hope you'll join us again next week. Thanks so much.
Bye for now.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.